Okay, first of all, I have to tell you, I'm absolutely thrilled to be here because there's a special place in my heart for Power Options. It was my first energy job in the late 90s. And in this job that I have now, which I've been in for about 5.5 years, I get to have the privilege of traveling around the country. And I can tell all of you this for sure. I don't believe there is another organization like Power Options anywhere. And to go back to one of Cindy's points when she opened the conference up, there truly is no such thing as a stupid question, because I exhausted all of them when I worked with Liam Sullivan when I first started. You should really, I tortured the poor man. I recognize some of you, and it was particularly exciting for me when Buck Creel came in and he actually remembered me. So anyhow, you should feel very fortunate that Massachusetts has an organization like Power Options, and all of you in attendance today are frankly a tribute to the quality of that organization and your interest in understanding what your energy options are and understanding the industry itself. This is a kind of a quick overview of what I'd like to talk about. I really do want to try to be quick, and I already blew it. Okay, that's backwards. Sorry, I'm technologically inept. Just to tell you a little bit of who we are, as Cindy said, I represent about 85% of the generation in New England, and there is a little pie chart of what that generation looks like. The organization has been around since November of 2005, and this is a very important slide for us because I think it gets lost in some of the discussions. And I think one of the biggest challenges that I've seen in this industry since I've been in it is that people who ultimately pay the bill, which is frankly all of you, since there's only one wallet in the room, and that is that of the customer, don't have the time or take the time to fully understand how the industry works and who the players really are. And this is important because my members are actually part of the economic engine, the backbone of the economic engine that will drive the economy in Massachusetts and in New England. So, getting into my experience for most of my professional career, which after Power Options I was with Associated Industries of Massachusetts representing business customers, the two things that I always heard about electricity, that the biggest concern was cost and reliability. And I think I want that theme throughout some of this discussion today. Environmental policy changes, while very important initiatives to New England, and as I've learned in my travels across the country, the rest of the country doesn't necessarily think about some of these issues quite the way New England does. But all of those initiatives contribute inevitably to increased costs that eventually, as I say, all get passed on to you. I will say that much like our children, I think everyone has forgotten some of the benefits of competition, both in efficiency, that translates directly into costs, and to the decreased costs and the important environmental improvements that the rest of the country is only beginning to think about, and beginning to think about how they're going to deal with it with these EPA regs. New England and Massachusetts, as you heard earlier, are frankly clearly leaders in that area. But again, that does come with a cost. Here's a snapshot of the existing fleet, where we are, and what at least are some of the contributing factors. Oh, actually, I'm a slide off. Sorry about that. Okay, some of the some of the contributing factors, and most important, why you care and how it impacts your businesses. Okay, I know I'm caught up, I apologize. Under the guise of furthering environmental policy, these 4 projects in one way or another involve policymakers essentially picking winners and losers. In other words, there was no competition involved whatsoever in these contracts in any way. And the key point I want to make to all of you, and I want you to help I want you to understand, is that my members do not in any way whatsoever oppose any of these projects. In fact, my members respect the climate objectives of state policymakers, and as such, we want them to know, and I take every opportunity I can to tell them, that we are part of the solution, not part of the problem. The bottom line is that the companies that I represent, which are some of the largest wind developers in the United States, and one of my companies is in the process of building a 500 megawatt solar farm out in California, we want the ability to compete for those contracts, no matter what kind of generation that policymakers are looking for, whether it's wind, solar, or the need for gas generation to follow some of the wind that they're talking about building here in New England. So why are these contracts important, and why do you care, and how do they affect some of your businesses? They affect the markets today by taking those critical megawatts and taking them out of the market. And even though they are paid well above market, and everybody has heard about the costs of Cape Wind, so I don't need to go down that road. Those costs would be bid in at zero. And here's why all of you need to care about flawed, and I will say mind-cramping market design at times. Paul Peterson, I think, can agree with that, in these rules, because combined with some of the policy initiatives, they have unintended or perhaps one might say intended consequences on some of these on prices. Let's go back to the cost and the reliability comment I made earlier, because some suppliers, both generators, some suppliers, and when I say suppliers, I'm talking about the generators that I represent, but also demand resources, cannot survive under the existing price conditions. To be more specific, this is not just the older coal units set to retire, like we discussed earlier with Salem Harbor Station, but also some of the cleanest, most efficient gas units, such as the one in Boston Harbor that just went through a bankruptcy proceeding earlier this year. An important discussion that has begun, and Carolyn O'Connor talked about it, with the system operator and NEPOOL participants include the active participation by the Mass Consumer Advocate, who is at the Attorney General's office that Jed Nozel represents, and also with Power Options. They are all actively participating, and it's important in these discussions. But let me be clear that the pendulum, with about 5,300 megawatts long in these markets, will be swinging back, and in reality could hit this region right in the head all at the same time. Carolyn alluded to that as well. And remember the wallet in the room. That would leave the consumers, we believe, with inefficient and potentially more costly default options that I have listed on that one. But the big question is, what should you do as a business customer? And you're doing it by all being here right now, and that is to get involved. You have options and assistance to do just that with two of the best tools in your toolbox, which is Power Options and the Consumer Liaison Group. And with that, I will turn it back over. Thank you.